Good afternoon, Lisa Wise. How are you today?
I'm doing so well, thank you.
Awesome. It's good to hear. So, Lisa, welcome. This is Lending with Purpose. These are conversations that we have with clients and friends. Introduction to various forms of information, professionals like yourself, resources that we use, we look for, or never knew existed or wanted to learn more about. And so, I think today you definitely sort of check off all those boxes and what we're going to talk about today. So, I want to thank you for your time. And what I always try to do is start off with like a quick story or just some sort of a did you know? Uh, and then today, this morning, when I was getting prepared for this, I was thinking like, what do I talk about? So I remember the conversation that we had last year, and it was a great conversation that the two of us had about sort of your background and why you do what you do in regards to purpose, and that's super important for me because I always feel like you have to start with some sort of a why um, to determine like how you're going to hit your targets and why those are important for you. And so I thought back on Lisa, my first home purchase, and we sort of talked about this before in our conversation, but I'm very grateful that I had some resources to help me along the way. Lots of times in certain communities and such, Lisa, we don't have resources. I remember the first home I was going to buy, it was an investment property. I had family members that had owned this property for quite a while. It was a Lisa, it was a double wide trailer, and in my hometown. And they're like, "Well, Shawn, you quote unquote done well for yourself, went to college, um, you have a good job, you've made some money. We want to keep this particular property in the family. Do you want to buy it?" And I'm like, "Well, sure." But I wasn't living here, so it wasn't a property that I was actually going to stay in. And it turned out for me, Lisa, buying this property as an investment property. So what we were able to do is my family was able to do a second mortgage on that particular house, and they did some owner financing on the second piece of it. So I was able to come up with the 80%. The second portion of the home was done on a second lien, just between myself and my family, right? And so I was able to purchase the property that way, and then shortly thereafter, they forgave the second trust. And so it when I was thinking about this story, it led me to think about some of the things that we talked about and how in certain communities those types of opportunities aren't readily available. Lots of times, you go to mom and dad and you ask for help. Mom and dad can't help you, or a family member and such, or if they do, you got to pay them back. And then that increases and creates another financial struggle potentially for you. But then in some other communities, you have access to resources similar to myself, where there are some wealth that has been built up, and some resources that will allow you to have an easy entrance, or less of a barrier into home ownership. And so I wanted to share that story with everyone today, and also with you, because I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today. You have an amazing organization with with Birdseed, and what you do with Flock DC Birdwatch. And so I wanted to obviously highlight that today. The topic or conversation, as you know, is going to be about your no strings attached down payment assistance program. And I think it's super important, especially with these economic times, that we talk about that. So, with that said, Lisa, you're going to do a much better job introducing yourself, I promise you, than I will. So, tell us who you are, what you do, and we'll get into our conversation.
Thanks, Shawn. I liked that story of creatively financing your first investment property in a way that sort of favored an entire family. And it would have been really hard for you to do that if you were just seeking traditional, conventional lending. Probably you weren't going to qualify. Um, it's very hard, I think, for people who have not been discriminated against to imagine how much discrimination exists in the real estate industry, and how hard and challenging it's been for some to build intergenerational wealth. But I'll get to that in a little bit. I'll give you an introduction to who I am and what I've been up to. I am the owner founder of Flock DC, which is a family of real estate management companies. We manage about $2 billion in property in Washington, D.C. We've been in business for 13 years. I have a team of about 70 people, and our objective is really straightforward. We want to create high quality exceptional living experiences for people in the District of Columbia. We want people to live in dignified housing. We want people to be treated as if they're owners, taken care of, and feel like they have safe and secure housing. I entered the business feeling like I was really invested in doing property management in a way that nobody else had, which was a sense of empathy, and an understanding that people make up our community, and if they're having good experiences at home, they'll be happier in the world and in their neighborhoods, and better neighborhoods lead to stronger and more robust and sustainable economies for our communities. And it really worked. I think there was a lot of strong reception for the strong brands that we'd created, and an attractive brands that we created that I think resonated well with people. Um, we committed to delivering on the promises that we were making our clients and our customers, which was to take good care of them, to care about the outcome, to understand that people are really in need of being well taken care of in their homes, and we had a unique opportunity and a privilege to do that well. So Flock has grown over the years, as you can imagine. It's been kind of a dream come true for me to be an entrepreneur. I've always felt and behaved in a very entrepreneurial way since I was growing up. Um, During the pandemic was a particularly painful and hard time for everybody. And when the layer of things that started to create so much complexity in our dialogue as a city, as business owners, as individuals, um, we're we really reflected a lot as a company around how we could go beyond just being purpose driven and caring about justice to being actively anti-racist, actively participating in a social justice based environment. When it was becoming clearer and clearer that the real estate industry has benefited so deeply from racist policy, and by denying people access to home ownership, very intentionally. It's very much built that way. And I felt after George Floyd was murdered, very uncomfortable continuing to be part of an industry that has made little effort to correct itself, and continues to be full of discrimination. And so I said, well, I think this is a chance for us to do something differently. So we really activated a lot of our work on social justice work and housing justice work, and focusing on reparative justice, which was to say, if our business can be profitable, even marginally profitable, then we should be directing some of those profits to those who have been excluded from building wealth through real estate. And so we started our Birdseed Foundation in 2021, and started making down payment grants to first-time Black and Brown home buyers in the DC area, and with no strings attached. So those are some of my birds. We feel great about the work that we're doing. I have a new company that we launched in January, and super excited about that. So for the first time, my business is expanding beyond Washington, D.C. We're now active in Philadelphia, and that's a program where we offer property management services for homeowners. So you take the tenant out of the equation, and for busy homeowners that like their time back and would like to just make one call, Birdwatch is a service for them. And Birdwatch is designed to support the Birdseed Foundation. And so Birdseed will receive some funding from Birdwatch. 1% of our profits will go to Birdwatch or to Birdseed as a company, and as a public benefits corporation, that's built into our governing documents. So we're really excited about knowing that as Birdwatch grows, so will Birdseed.
It's awesome. Makes my heart smile. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
That's a lot to unpack. Tremendous amount of time, energy, and effort, I'm sure, that you've taken to put into this. Labor of love also. But help me understand. I'm dying to know. That's why I love these conversations, because I think sometimes more selfish, because I'm just like, all right, I want to ask these questions. So if I have the question, and everyone else will, where's the bird coming from, the flock, and the
Right.
where is that all coming from?
Our first business was called Nest,
Yes.
and I feel like you need to put a bird in the nest. So it was really kind of like that simple to begin with. But in terms of sort of like what's the enthusiasm, like where does this how did the birds tie together? I mean, we could have just gone with one bird and then moved on to something different, but people were really responsive to it. I think people like birds. I think they like the idea of sort of freedom. For me, it represented an ability to just explore something that I hadn't thought of before, and in terms of sort of where my life would take me. And when I was growing up, and this is pretty heavily referenced in the book that I wrote, um, I lived in 23 different places before I went to college. And growing up, the place I felt most secure and most cared for was my grandmother's. And she had a pretty large ranch just outside of Boulder, Colorado. When she turned 40, she decided to start painting. After having 4 kids and raising 4 kids, she decided to start painting, and she was a naturalist and became a well-known watercolor artist. Um, and painted beautiful, beautiful large format paintings of every kind of bird that you can imagine. And I just felt closest and to her as a human, and safest with her as another human. And so I think birds sort of gave me that backdrop a bit.
Got it. Got it. No, thanks for that. That's a great. I heard the freedom piece from that, but I also attribute to your grandmother in there as well. So thanks for answering that. So Lisa, black and brown homeowners. I know you mentioned about the fact that George Floyd was murdered. We all saw that. It was a huge ordeal in the country, around the world, I should say. But like, what led you specifically to go all in on providing these grants to Black and Brown homeowners, right? So number one, why? But then also unpack it for us and tell us how it works, and what the benefits are from this program.
Yeah, I'm happy to. When I was in high, I was when I was college. I was like a year in, and I got a phone call from my aunt Susan, and she said, you have a cousin Richard who lives in Tucson, where I'd gone to college. And she said, you should look him up. And I immediately thought, oh, Richard will have a wife and maybe they'll make me a meal. And, it was the early 90s. It's kind of what you expected. But he told me, he's like, meet me in the corner in downtown. I said, oh, that's not the foothills I was expecting. Or I was, and I hadn't really ever heard about my cousin Richard, who was my dad's age. So he's older than I was. And I meet him and I'm like, oh, he's an interpretive dancer, landscape, and an architect, and just and very, very gay. And we were just instantly friends, and um, really close over many years. But it was the 90s, and so Richard developed full blown AIDS, and I was able to take care of him for a number of years, and until he died. And he said, "Listen, I want you to do 2 things when I die. Um, I want you to um, I want you to take over the lease to my house, because I know that you feel good here, that this is a house that you really like." And I'd always really liked housing in general. I liked thinking about space quite a bit. And his layout was great. It was an adobe house. I did feel very connected to that house. But then he said, take my Honda Civic. And I said, great, I'll take the Honda Civic. So, I mean, I had to take all of his things, and I gave them away to his friends, and settled his estate. And then I immediately sold the car, and I sold it for $8,300. It would have been nice to have the car, but I wanted the $8,300. And then I called my landlord, who lived in Australia, and I said, and I lived in a duplex, which in Arizona is 2 houses side by side connected. And I said, listen, um, it's impractical for you to manage this property from Australia. Would you be interested in selling it to me? And he said, yeah, actually, I think that's a great idea. I really don't have any business managing a property from Australia. And so we settled on $83,000 as the sales price for that house. And I had my 10% down payment. And that $8,300, that black Honda Civic, that relationship with a cousin completely transformed my life in every possible way, from the security I felt owning my own home, to knowing that I was able to build wealth, to becoming and learning how to be a landlady and understanding what it meant to take good care of residents and give them a great living experience, to improving a property, to being a good neighbor, to just really to preserving part of history. It was an 1893 adobe duplex. And the house is really magical. I think the energy I was able to put in it, learning to work with my hands even more, was just beyond rewarding. So fast forward to like a very dark night, and I was doing a lot of succession planning and estate planning, and I was working with an attorney to go over what will happen when I die, and why not study that during a pandemic? It seemed like a good topic. You want to, I have thousands of clients relying on me. I need to be thoughtful about what that looks like and making sure that the company is protected. And so going through all those details, there's some question marks like, okay, there's going to be a lot of insurance and you have a plan for the company, but there will be more there that you can pass on. And I was really struggling to find an organization that felt right, or to figure out what felt right. And I went on a walk that night with the dogs, like, October of 2020, not a great year in general, right, for anybody. And I
Oh
thought,
yeah.
what I really want to do is I just want to help people buy houses, and I want to I want to make some contribution to like closing this racial wealth gap, because I don't feel comfortable with my industry at all. It was so intentional. And then I thought, yeah, I'm gonna just that this money will get created, and then I'm just gonna what we can do is just like simply write people a check when they close on their properties, and it'll be a really easy application. So thinking about how it works in my head, and then I was like, yeah, that's what should happen to the money. And then I turned around to come back home, and I thought, I was like, oh, well, I don't really want to have to die for that to get started. So why don't we just do that now? Why don't we just do it right now? And so by the time I got home from that walk, I had texted people, 3 or 4 people, saying, I'm going to get started on this idea right away. And the president of my company, Grace Langham, when I texted her, said, this sounds great. We've been really excited about getting into um, housing justice and being even more intentionally anti-racist. And she said, you're thinking about this like next year, or, what's your timing? And I said, I'm thinking next week, to be honest. And she's like, okay, well, okay. So, I said, listen, I'll work on it and I'll get this off the ground and let's see where it goes. And so, we had been doing micro grants for a while. We had a very simple one-page application. I said, let's just build on what we already know how to do, which is make it really simple, make it no strings, and just give people that windfall that can change their lives. And so I wanted someone to have an $8,300 windfall, or the equivalent, to accelerate that home buying process, and to to give them money that they didn't have to save over a very long period of time, but to just really do what we could to get people into homes that they could buy and start building equity.
Right. And why was that important though? Like the I think a lot of people don't understand the fact or the reason behind the no strings, right? Because there is a difference between some other programs that are out here that, well, number one, it's the money's tied to an interest rate. So it's inflated. You're going to pay it back over X amount of years anyway, right? Um, and lots of times it's not forgiven as well. And so for you, yours is just no strings. And so like, why was that important to you? And how does that really benefit homeowners by having something like that?
Yeah, what's interesting is I thought there would be lots of programs like this, so I just assumed there were, and then at some point I started looking for them. I'm like, no, there's actually not a single program like this in the country where we just trust people to use the money. There are a lot of down payment assistance programs which are highly structured, and there's a lot of compliance, and there's forgiveness over time, and then there are just a lot of bureaucracy and rules and hoops that the grantee has to jump through. And I actually don't call that a windfall. I just call that another chore in trying to get what people deserved in the first place. So, I've had, and I really don't have any bandwidth as someone who really is supposed to be working on my core business, to be worrying about whether someone is taking a financial planning course and amortizing $10,000 over 5 years. That doesn't interest me at all. What we wanted was to just help people get into homes, and we thought, why don't we just make this as simple as possible? Because as simple as it is for the applicant, it's equally simple for us. This can be a lot more streamlined because, I understand the impulse for people, especially in philanthropy, to build programs that are designed to keep people from poor intention, the bad actors from spoiling things. Maybe someone used the grant inappropriately. Maybe somebody, didn't follow the rules, or we find out later that they weren't a first-time home buyer. They bought something before. And at the end of the day, I'm like, just budget for that, and then assume the other 90% of folks are going to do things exactly the way they were designed and not punish everyone. And that's okay. So, a one-page application, there's an interview. There really shouldn't be anything on the application that should take research, right? You should be able to do off the top of your head. Um, and then, a 15-20 minute interview, and we get to results as quickly as possible. And the only thing that we ask of people is that they send a photo. Those photos are really, really rewarding to see. And then it's done. So they get them the cash at closing, and then it's done. Then we wish them really well, and that windfall happened, and they're, that $10,000 or $15,000 that they got from the program starts to help them earn equity as quickly as possible, and hopefully we get them into that home a lot faster. So if I give someone $10 or $15,000, and it was going to take them 2 years to save that $10 or $15,000, they lost 2 years of equity, 2 equity building years. So what's the value of that $10,000? Is actually not insignificant at all. It can start growing so quickly. So moving fast, not bogging the process down, trusting people to know exactly what to do, offering support as needed. But I think that was the whole objective behind how we designed it.
Understood. And how much have you raised, and also awarded so far? And then we'll move on to the next thing. But as you know, I'm very intrigued by this. I own a mortgage company. It's a brokerage, and how we were connected was a very trusted source, resources between the two of us. Nia connected us,
Hmm.
and I've just been like very intrigued by it. And it's to be quite honest with you, it's not too good to be true, but it's like, like, ooh, what's the catch? Um, at first, and when you told me about it, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And so my question to you is, how much have you raised, and then how much have you given away so far? And then do you have any goals for future growth with this particular program?
Yeah, we do. Thank you. So I committed personally $215,000 to get the fund started. We were really working toward building the stories and the proof of concept, and so people could really start to warm up to the idea of what we were doing, and that we were guessing it was going to work. And then we'd start doing more active fundraising. But we were really fortunate, even just through passively, we've been able to attract another $200,000 in donations, which is fantastic because we've been moving as quickly as we can with regard to awarding these down payment grants. And so in our first 14 months, we've had 10 families close on homes. We've had 18 provisional grantees, and we've awarded $155,000 in grants. We just closed a round on May 31st, so we'll review our applicants on tomorrow, actually, and then on Tuesday we'll notify them. We move as fast as we possibly can so we can, again, get people in those homes as quickly as possible. So we have that $400,000 that has been raised or committed to help continue that funding. But we're moving through it quickly. And so we'll have to start doing more aggressive fundraising and more intentional fundraising, which I'm hopeful will be fruitful. But Birdwatch, like I said, is designed to really help support birdseed. And as that company grows, we're going to be able to support birdseed. And wherever Birdwatch goes, birdseed will go. And we're operational in Philadelphia now. And so we'll start making grants in Philadelphia in October as well. So what we'd like to do is model this out, and have it be, programmed across the country so that people are seeing the simplicity of helping people with a windfall so that they can get into homes and we can start closing this racial wealth gap.
Thanks for that. I don't have any more questions about that. Like, you've answered them all, and it's very clear, super common sense. You know, thank you, Lisa,
Mhm.
for that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know the community appreciates it. We're going to continue to support as best as we can at Fortis Mortgage and support more. But before we, because I respect your time and I do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. But let's talk about your book. You wrote a book.
I wrote a book.
Uh, yeah, let's talk about that. You've done a lot through this pandemic, and let's talk about your book. Tell us about your book. Like, why'd you write the book, and what's it about, and
Yeah.
what's it going to look like in the future with this book?
Thank you. It had always been a kind of a dream to write a book, but going through the Idaho public school system, it's actually a miracle I can read, let alone write a book, which is what I always make the argument that I certainly wasn't prepared for it. But I thought I had a lot to say about how business unfolded and why I have been able to do as well as I have as an entrepreneur that has no formal training. I joke that I have an MBA from Inc. magazine because I just read magazines about business and then just made it up as I went. Completely self-taught. I didn't take any investor dollars, and now, we're $6 to $7 million company with 70 employees, touching thousands of doors every day, and I did it with a social justice lens, and I did it with a totally different operational model than I'd seen anyone else in similar roles pull off. And I felt like what we were doing and how we were doing it from a culture perspective, um, to servant leadership, to the startup mentality and methodology that we used to power the companies, was really a secret formula. And that if I was able to capture that in writing, I had something to offer other entrepreneurs who are not only interested in making money but making a difference at the same time. And I think they don't have to be mutually exclusive. And in fact, I think if you're trying to make a difference, you're more likely to make a bigger profit. And it may be a matter of how you're defining profit. But the book is called Self-Elected: How to Put Justice Over People, over Profit, and Soar in Business. You can drop your name on the interest list. It'll be, I think I'll be able to hold it without a binder clip, but actually with a cover and everything, in the next 6 weeks. And we'll be doing a launch party in October. The book is part memoir. It talks a lot about my childhood and the lack of security that I had growing up, and being housing insecure in general. I talk a lot about why my entrepreneurial spirit, but also my sense of justice, is what got me where I am today, and how I would share those practices and the pathways that I developed to be successful. And then finally, why I think that if this world is going to be okay, we need people who own businesses to do good business. And that means taking care of employees as whole people, not just as assets. It means being good stewards of our environment. It means understanding what authentic diversity looks like, not just having some folks on your website or saying that you did a DE&I training. It's giving back to community. It's creating pathways to jobs for folks who have been excluded, people returning citizens. And there's so many things that I am uniquely positioned to do because if I have a $7 million company, I'm spending $7 million. How do I get to do that? And I get to, that's my choice, right? I've got to pay for people. So which people do I want to attract? And how do I want to reward them? And what do I want their day to look like at work? And so this is all about why I think this is a pathway to a brighter future, via business. And I get to choose that adventure because that's my prerogative as a business owner. And I think that's why I feel self-elected to try and change the world through my business.
Self-elected. That's when are you going to publish? You said October.
Yeah, late September, early October, you'll be able to touch it.
Well, you say that with the sigh. So what's up with that?
Oh, it took so long. I mean, as with all things, I jump, head first into ideas without having any idea of how hard they'll be. I mean, birdseed. Oh, it'll be easy. Write the book. It'll be hard, but it'll work in everything. I just kind of go in uninformed, and I think that's pretty intentional, to be honest. If I knew too much about how the book was going to unfold, I probably wouldn't have taken that chance, and I'm really glad that I did.
I can't wait for you to talk to my team so you can tell them that it's a good thing to go in uninformed sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, last question before we get to the final question. What keeps you up like these days? Like, do you have something that's sort of an itch, or just keeps you motivated and sort of keeps you up? A problem that you're looking to solve?
Um, Kids, and wanting kids to understand why being in a kind and empathic world is partly their responsibility, and it's my responsibility to help also leave them one that's where they're feeling safe. Um, I want their environment to be safe. I want their housing to be safe. I want their schooling to be safe. I want them to have opportunity. I want them to understand that it's also their job to help others with their opportunity. So I just want a more equitable world. I do think about it quite a bit, to be honest.
And then what can we do to help you? What do you need from us? We're in a community and an environment now where there's unfortunately there's not millions of people listening to this live right now, but it often gets circulated, and this message will go out. Like, how can we help you specifically? What do you need? And then also, how do we engage with your organization?
Oh, thank you. Well, any support we get for the Birdseed Foundation is so welcome. 100% of the operations are financed by my company. And so every dollar that goes to the Birdseed Foundation is 100% earmarked for a down payment grant, which has been such a gift to be able to do that. We're going to do that for as long as we can. So we will need more money to make these grants. And if someone is looking for a place to where they can actually put a name to a donation, um, it's it to me it's the most rewarding work I've ever done. Full stop is the Birdseed Foundation, and we need not only dollars, but we need visibility. So socialize Birdseed and why it's important to your colleagues. Say, have you thought of anything like this? Is there someone that you know that might be interested in applying? The more visibility we have as an organization, I think the more people will understand that this is what I call disruptive philanthropy. It's very much outside of like a traditional philanthropic pacing. Um, it's nimble. It feels really good to know that we're getting to data points that say, yeah, this is working. I need support in Philadelphia. I need to start growing my network and connecting with folks that are going to welcome this program and my business in Philadelphia. And so um, growing that network, it all kind of goes hand in hand. And so visibility and people supporting Birdseed and sharing it out with their community, all that stuff was really great.
Thank you. And then how do lastly on that piece, how do we connect with your organizations?
You can find me at flock-dc.com. You can go to my meetlisawise.com website, and or you can just Google me and I'll come up. I've been talking a lot lately, so
Got it. We'll put that in the chat. So thanks for that. So last but not least, the $1 million question. You ready?
yeah.
Yeah. So Lisa, you get one person, one question. I don't know. You're having breakfast, lunch, coffee, dinner, whatever it might be. A wish, conversation. Who would it be, and what would you ask?
It would be my grandmother, and I think I'd just ask her how she's doing. Um, I think I just like one more conversation with my grandmother.
Okay, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
that's great. I really enjoy this question. It's bittersweet for a lot of people, but I really like hearing the responses and the answers
Yeah.
behind them. So thanks for that. I know she was very impactful in your life, and no, that's awesome. So everyone, it would be as I say every week, such a shame for me to have folks in the network like Lisa and not share her or them with you. And it's been an amazing conversation. We do appreciate everything that you do, Lisa. Everyone, if there's anything that I can do to help in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. Still do your very best to remain as safe and as healthy as possible. And next week we won't have a show. I'll be traveling a bit, but no show next week. But we will be having more great people on like Lisa. But Lisa, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. I really
This was
enjoyed our
awesome.
time.
Thanks, and everyone. We'll see you week after next. Lisa, I ask you to just hang on, and I'll close everything out. But thanks again.